Hello everyone, Kevin here, and I'm here with my partner Jason, here to bring you another exciting episode of the Cyber Distortion podcast. In tonight's episode, we'll be talking about a very hot topic in the world of cybersecurity, the topic of ransomware. So if you've ever been hit with ransomware, or don't want to get hit with ransomware, or if you're kind of like Jason and just happen to think that ransomware sucks, well, stay tuned because things are about to get real.
We are also very excited about our guest this episode. He is a seasoned certified information systems auditor and a certified data privacy solutions engineer. I don't know about you, Kevin, but I am hyped to talk shop with this guy.
Oh, you know that's right, Jason. So buckle up, everybody. The real episode 1 is coming at you.
Welcome to the Cyber Distortion podcast. Joining us tonight is a very special guest, a friend of mine, Benjamin Hall. Ben is a security consultant with over 15 years in risk management and security consultation. Ben, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Thanks, Kevin. Happy to be on the podcast today. Kind of got started in, governance risk compliance while I was working for a bank. Had no intent of jumping into the IT realm. Started messing around with the applications we had and really got to know the ins and outs of what we were doing. I guess you can kind of say I was ethically hacking them maybe a little bit and finding out more the capabilities of what they could do. It led me into an IT career where the VP of IT is like, hey, what's going on over there? Why you keep doing this stuff? I was like, I don't know. I thought I was getting fired. Thought I was getting written up. Thought all this bad stuff was happening. Led into a world of IT, which then dove into compliance, which dove into security, risk management, and just kind of, being in Iowa, you kind of get your footwork in just about any particular area possible for information security across all the different verticals, financial, healthcare, banking, all that good stuff. So it just really helps bring in all that whole governance, risk management aspect of all the different frameworks we got to follow. So it's a passion. I enjoy doing it, enjoy working with organizations, kind of help them increase their security posture and hopefully not point out too many holes, or if we do, hopefully we find them before the bad guys do.
Yeah, exactly, man. That's so important. And I think one of the big keys that people don't recognize, which I appreciate you telling your background and your story to it, is all of the different avenues that you could take in order to get to the point where you become a cybersecurity professional, And there are different aspects of being a cybersecurity professional and different roles that you can take in that profession. And so it was good to hear how you could kind of come up and make a name for yourself and kind of land somewhere that you have fun and enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. My dad was a roofer, did construction, so I did that and realized I don't want to break my back all day. So I got to figure out, I got to find an office job. I got to find something that's interesting.
That's so awesome. I when I was putting myself through college, my dad was a framing contractor. So living in Texas and dealing with the August and July summer times, doing that kind of work, I told myself early on and often too, man, I said, no way do you want to make your living doing this for the rest of your life. So stay in school, finish it up, get your degree, and then sit behind a computer all day doing something easy in the AC.
Absolutely.
So glad I went that direction. But Ben, thanks again for joining us. We know you're very busy, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. And it's going to be awesome to get the perspective from someone in risk and governance and with your background as it relates to ransomware. One of the things that we're going to try to do with this podcast is keep it cybersecurity 101 a lot of the time, and we don't want to assume that anybody that's listening knows everything. And so a lot of the things that we'll regurgitate will seem a little bit trivial and elementary, but there's a reason for that. We want everybody to understand, what we're talking about and why we're talking about it. And hopefully anybody at any phase of their development can take something away from this. So I thought it would be good to kind of level set this conversation by defining ransomware, because everybody's heard that term, and I believe almost everybody in security certainly knows what it is, but There may be some people out there that will listen to this that don't understand what ransomware is. So I'm going to read a definition here that I've got on ransomware, just so that we have that out of the way and everybody kind of understands what we're talking about tonight. So ransomware is a malware that employs encryption to hold a victim's information at ransom. A user or organization's critical data is encrypted so that they cannot access files, databases, or applications. A ransom is then demanded to provide access. Ransomware is often designed to spread across the network and target databases and file servers, and can thus quickly paralyze an entire organization. So it's a virus, just like a virus, but it's encrypting the files
that's
as
some
it
nasty
goes.
stuff, dude. You do not want to be waking up one day to find yourself having to respond to a ransomware attack. That is a rough day in all aspects of the
No,
word.
you don't.
So let's kind of go through this a little
Certainly.
bit. We're going to start this off, I think, with trying to get our audience a little bit more aware of the magnitude of ransomware. And we thought it would be fun to share some horror stories of ransomware. You know, we're all professionals in cybersecurity, and we have our own flavors of what we've had to experience or have heard about, or we read and we're just like, oh man, really? Did that happen? So we thought it'd be fun to kind of share that. So we're going to start with you, Ben, since you're the guest. You get the honors.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I know in the intro episode, you talked about JBS and then, of course, Colonial Pipeline, which, I mean, honestly, at this point, you could throw a dart and talk about a ransomware story. There's been so many that have happened recently. One that impacted home, for me anyway, was working with an organization. They're based out of California. They do stuff with insurance. They had an API built into this insurance firm in New York that also does cyber insurance. That insurance firm, CNA Insurance out of New York, it's all public. It happened March of last year. They basically got hit with ransomware, knocked out all of their servers. About 15,000 machines were knocked out, remote workers, workstations, everything, just completely wiped them. They were down for about 10 days. The organization I worked with, obviously, as soon as we found out, killed all those APIs, killed any access connections we had within, put on some monitoring agents just to make sure if they tried to probe the network and connect, everything was shut down and locked up. But it was just crazy because, I mean, I think CNA Insurance, right? They write cyber insurance premiums. So a hacker getting a hold of that information, yes, holding it at ransom, putting encryption on it so they can't get to it. What if they exfiltrate some of that and get some of that information? They now know, hey, these 10 firms, their payout's $5 million. So they know they can say, hey, give us $5 million, get your information back. They were just able to obtain all that stuff. And I just think that's scary because anything can happen, right? Well, I think we'll talk later on about how, you know, people get impacted by these, and it's so simple, it's stupid on how it takes place, but it can wipe out an organization, and that can then trickle down and impact other organizations as well. So it's just scary stuff.
Oh, it is, definitely. I tell you one that I heard recently, and you're right, that it sounds like, which I don't think people really fully understand how often this is happening within and outside of our communities. And so I heard one earlier this fall where, in fact, I talked to the people who this occurred with, where it was ransomware, it was a foreign state actor, Russians, and they actually called them on the phone and said, hey, we've got your stuff and we're going to release it to the dark web if you don't just pay us. And so why don't you just pay us? And gave them evidence that they did have their stuff, and they were just, I mean, there's nothing more you could have done, right? When they're calling you on the phone, you know there's a serious problem. There's no way you're going to tap dance yourself out of that.
They literally picked up the phone. They literally picked up the phone.
Right.
You don't see that all the time.
Right, so it makes you just, it puts a whole new meaning on the magnitude that a hacker is willing to go through in order to do whatever their intent is, right? If their intent is to make money, if their intent is to exfiltrate information or to test a system for a larger attack, whatever their intent is, there is just no limit to what they will do to get there. And, you know, I think when I heard that story, I was like, oh my gosh, really? Oh man, I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, and some of these groups, they have HR, they have
Yeah.
tech support, they have all sorts of these different channels, sales even, because they can sell their tool that they made. It's just,
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's a full-fledged
Ransomware
org.
as a
It's insane.
service.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a business now. It really is.
It's your
I
turn.
guess, is it my
It's your
turn?
turn,
Are you
Kevin.
wanting me to share? Gosh. Okay. Well, I think two of them come to mind actually. And the first one, I'll make this one pretty quick. And Jason, you'll remember this one actually because it was my second year at Black
Oh.
Hat and DEF CON. Your
yes,
first
I
year.
remember it.
You remember this one? So we had just gotten off the tram. Black Hat, DEF CON actually was on the other side of the strip from where we were staying. I was staying up at MGM. Jason was at Luxor. We had to take the tram down to Caesars, and we're walking through Flamingo. Crazy crowd in the Flamingo lobby, and all these people complaining and grumbling and everything. And you could tell that like the check-in line was extremely long.
And it was
Check
like
in,
2
check
o'clock
out,
in the
whatever.
morning, too, just by the way.
Yeah, ridiculous when the timing happened on this thing. But we just happened to overhear someone saying, "Yeah, they got hacked," and we're like, "Wait, what? What happened here?" And they said the hackers staying at the Flamingo and at Caesars and all the surrounding hotels hacked the network of the hotel and shut down the reservation desk, so they couldn't check customers in or check customers out. And people are just sitting there furious in the lobby for hours for this thing. So, hey, but that's what happens when you bring in 20,000 bored basement dwelling hackers that have nothing to do with their time, and just need something to fill their time. And it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Hey, what better way to do it than hacking, right? So it was that was an awesome story. The other one that comes to mind is actually a ski lodge. It's an Austrian ski lodge. And I heard about this one a couple years ago, and the DEF CON attack reminded me of this. And it was a reservation service. Actually, it was the keys to the door, the electronic keys to the door got hacked. And they were saying that the people staying at the hotel couldn't get into their rooms, and they couldn't get out of their rooms because the electronic key service was not working. Turns out later on they found out that was a little bit of an elaborate lie, and it was really just you couldn't get into a room because the systems were completely down. But it made me think of the Flamingo when I heard that story.
Yeah, that's a crazy story,
Wow.
too.
That's
I remember
too-
that night, man.
too
That was a rough night for a lot of people, and it was way until the early morning hours where people could finally get into their rooms from the reservations that they had made, months earlier, and they were excited to just get in and go to bed because it was already late at night by the time they were flew in and was trying to get into their rooms. So those are some rough stories, but
Well, that's not even the only time that's ever happened at DEF CON. In fact, DEF CON, they hacked one of the casinos and shut the lights down, shut the power down in the casino. And, everybody's freaking out on that too. And apparently because of that, and it was assumed to be hackers because hackers were trying to claim it, they weren't invited back to that hotel again the next year, as you can imagine.
So I'm going to add one more to the story because I think it was intriguing when I heard it this year, and I actually talked to the author of the author that executed the hack and wrote books on it. But this author is a white hat hacker, and what she does is she gets hired to go in and try to break systems, and so she specializes in hacking APIs. And when she was doing this, one of the things that she's in the past year or so, what she's focused on is vehicles and hacking into vehicles over the APIs that the manufacturer has created for that vehicle. And what she has been highlighting is, and what was the biggest highlight for this year was APIs is the biggest risk, because for years people have been developing APIs without security in mind. And now there's all these vulnerabilities in these APIs that no one really knows about but are being discovered. And what she was doing was she was being able to turn on vehicles specifically from certain manufacturers, start them, unlock them, turn on lights and in the police vehicles and things of that effect, right? She had full control over these vehicles, and it didn't stop there. She was able to do it for APIs that banking systems were using. She was able to do it for APIs that healthcare systems were using. And it was all just basic vulnerabilities because secure by design concepts were not implemented when the developers were writing code. They just didn't think about it, which for years developers have not thought about that. So if you put that in perspective, there are a lot of APIs out there connecting into a lot of systems out there that are vulnerability points that are waiting to be discovered, right? And that is the magnitude of vulnerability is that we're all in.
Absolutely. Vulnerable, super weak. All it takes is someone out there stiff in the outside, finds that vulnerability and finds their way in. It happens all the time. Yeah. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, exactly.
I think developers are getting better. They're getting better now than they used to be about understanding the importance of baking in the security into the code. It's taken some time. It's taken the right number of breaches and the right attention at the executive management level of these companies for that to become necessary. And now you're seeing these development managers starting to put some serious thought into testing their code. You know, you've heard of OWASP Top 20. A lot of the code that you see today, at the very least, needs to be tested for the common weaknesses that you hear about. But we're getting better. I think when I say we're getting better as a community, developers are getting better about that.
Yeah, and you're spot on there, Kevin. So, running vulnerability management scans, trying to find that before you're even, moving some code from development staging to production and just adding those additional checks in place, doing an annual pen test, so finding those holes, exploiting them again, making sure that everything's locked up. But with a lot of the regulations that are coming about too, they're really starting to crack down on organizations that do have some of those weak practices, that do have some of those weak software development life cycles that are in place. So a lot of those fines that can come down to some of those organizations that are regulated. And then insurance firms, when you're going to get your cyber insurance, they're basically running you through a full risk assessment. And if you can't answer that, you're doing these questions confidently, you're either going to pay a heavy premium or you're not going to be insured, which can then ruin your business. So
Yeah. Well, my company, which will remain nameless for the purposes of this episode tonight, I can't believe the amount of iterations we had to go through just to get through the cyber insurance process of getting the underwriters happy to say, okay, and you're right. It's like going through an assessment verbally and through email before they'll even consider you, even if you're a return customer.
Yeah,
it's getting that hard because there's
it's even
so many
harder
claims
sometimes
these
when
days.
you're a return customer because they're like, okay, well, yeah, you told us this last year, but now we're really going to double check that you were doing that last year, and we're going to ask even more questions this year.
Yeah, here's a 280
page
question.
They better ask more questions.
So, Kevin.
Yeah, I think the questionnaire went from 1 page to 8 pages.
So, Kevin, I think
year.
we're going to try to go into the different types of ransomware entry points to kind of give our audience a review.
Well, before we get into the types, let's back up a little bit. One thing we didn't talk about, and I think I'll hand this to Ben, is, in what you're seeing in risk, Ben, when companies are becoming infected, what are you seeing as the most common types of infections, and what can people do about it when they become infected with a ransomware? What are the steps they should be taking, both immediately and then after containment?
Yeah, great question. So say it's me sitting on my workstation today, I click the wrong link or I open the wrong email. All of a sudden I get that pop-up screen that says, hey, all your stuff's been encrypted. First thing you should do,
we own you.
Unplug your Ethernet cable, disable your Wi-Fi, make sure all those network connections are gone. I know some bygone practices, people would say shut down your machine. Unfortunately, with the way regulations are now, if you're in a regulated industry, we need to get a forensic image of that machine. So turning it off may get rid of some of that evidence. So disable it from the network. And then if you're not the IT security professional within your org, contact that person, let them know, tell your manager, let everybody know, so that way they can sound the alarms and do what needs to take place. You want to stop that spread, right? If you're in a file folder that may access that privileged information that your company holds, you could do some pretty extensive damage there. So unplug your machine, disable the Wi-Fi, let your IT staff know what's going on, tell your manager. And then from there, as the security professional aspect, it's limit the exposure, right? See how far that impact went. Hopefully you have some type of SIM tool or some type of XDR tool that can look at those events, break them down, and find out where they potentially traveled and what other machines may be impacted, what other servers may be impacted. And, it gets into that too, where we were talking cyber insurance a minute ago, is you're going to have to bring in your legal team. You're going to have to start contacting your cyber insurance firm to let them know what's going on. There's pretty heavy penalties, and even some instances where they won't pay out if you didn't let them know within a certain time frame, typically 24 hours of a known infection, letting them know. So starting that process as well. And then if you're a customer facing org, doing that unfortunate client communication, getting that ready, bringing in the right people to do that. So it starts at the end user, but it's a full team effect. Get that incident response team ready and start going.
You made a good comment there that that I think it's important to restate again, is that you have action steps you have to take immediately. And the primary action step, in simple terms, is disconnect that machine from your network or the internet, so that it can't move and spread to anything else. That's your primary first action in this, right? Yep. The second thing in this is, do not do anything else to that machine until you can do someone can do forensics on that machine. Because in many cases, if you're going to claim cybersecurity insurance without forensics, and you've tainted the crime scene at that point, there's no forensics that can be done. There's no bearing that you can claim your insurance on, other than, hey, I said that I was attacked, but I don't know anything about it or what happened. For all they care, you could have just corrupted your machine. How do they know, right? There has to be an evidence trail, and if you taint the evidence, then you may not get your payout for your insurance. So that is a very key piece. Then there are other aspects to following your protocol for establishing, how do you recover out of that scenario that you have to consider. To your point, talk to your IT team and let them guide you through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, you're spot on with that chain of custody. So even contacting your insurance firm, you may think you're a forensic expert. They're going to bring their own in because they want that outside opinion. They don't want that tainted evidence of you inadvertently blowing things up and making it worse. So they're going to bring in a forensics team on their own.
Yeah. And if you're following any type of a DR incident response plan, you're probably told first thing from your legal department, assuming you have one, or maybe just your public relations team, do not speak to anybody outside of this company about this breach. We do that.
Absolutely.
So you hit on a lot of really key things there with containment and chain of custody, and obviously do not screw up the crime scene by I better wipe this hard drive now and rebuild this system before anybody looks at it. They need to do the forensics. That's key, especially if you've got cyber insurance and you plan, or even if you don't plan to make a claim on this, there's always a chance you could come back and need to make a claim on this. Don't taint the machine. Set it aside, unplug it, leave it alone, and typically you also should be filing a police report on that incident as well, because that's part of that chain of custody. And then, of course, media and public relations, do not fire off an email to all your buddies. Man, we just got hit by ransomware.
Yeah.
Not smart, because that can come back on you.
So there's two more things I think that's important too. You brought up XDR and SIMs. And so just for the audience's understanding, what those tools do or designed to do is to pull information from logs that your computer systems have been writing based on the activity that has been happening on those systems. And so those systems are always writing logs out that capturing all this activity. And so a SIM or XDR will be able to read those logs, evaluate them, and might be the breadcrumb trail that leads you back into what actually happened. What was the patient zero entry point of the attack and how the attack occurred. And so that is also part of the forensics process, or the information that could be used in the forensics process. So that can be important tools to add into your environment if you're not understanding what that is. And then the second one that you brought up was that as you move through this cycle, and you're trying to keep things safe and secure and all these things, a small company who is experiencing something like this might have the question of, yeah, well, what you're telling me is that if I get attacked, then I can't do anything because my systems are down and I can't reboot my systems or replace them or recover them. What am I supposed to do? I have a business to run, right? What do you do in those cases? What would be your comments there, Ben?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. You know, there's so many SMBs that do get hit with a lot of that. Hopefully you're able to keep some type of equipment offhand, right? Stuff that hasn't maybe been connected to the network yet. You could run to a local coffee shop, plug that in there, bring up some information there to at least start the process of talking with people. We all have cell phones now. A lot of them are smart enabled where you can use that as well. But the main thing is just if you do know your network's compromised is try and minimize that impact. Take as much off it as you can. Hopefully, again, you do have some of those redundant machines you could take elsewhere. A personal machine even. Maybe give your wife a call or your husband a call and say, hey, I need you to help me out for a second. We got to do some communication, start that call tree process. But it is going to hurt a little bit. But in the end, you know, your small business, yes, is going to take an impact, but you don't want your small business to be that entry point that's going to lead to a larger business that could potentially sue you down the road as well. So take the breather, collect yourself, get some informed people in the room with you to help talk that through and work through it all. But yeah, it is like we talked earlier, it's nasty stuff. It's really, you just kind of got to go through the process and put in those prevention techniques before it happens, hopefully.
That's good. That's good insight.
Yeah. Key there is being just don't make matters worse, right? By being hasty about getting, you know, everybody understands the urgency to get the business back rolling. That's understood across the entire organization, but you don't want to do it at the cost of doing even more damage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And infecting even more systems.
Yeah, absolutely. Tech support days, I'm just wiping that machine, right? And moving on. But today you can't. You can't. You gotta preserve it.
Yeah, back in the good old days, we'd just clean that sucker right up and put it back out there. Man, we've covered a lot here in a short amount of time, so I think it's a good time for a quick recap, Jason, and then we'll come back and talk about some other awesome stuff around ransomware. What do you think?
In this segment, we discussed Intro to Ransomware. There are many paths and roles in cybersecurity. Ransomware is a virus that spreads through your network and encrypts your files. And one attack can trickle down and affect other organizations. We also discussed what to do if you think you're infected. Disconnect from the network and internet immediately. Do not turn off your computer. Contact your technical support team. Contact your legal team. Work with a forensics team approved by your insurance provider. And have a backup plan to replace your equipment timely.
All right, so ransomware, guys, you know, we look at some of these stats around it. In 2021, ransomware cost the world $20 billion. It's going nowhere because the predictions are stating that ransomware by the year 2031 are going to be costing the world around $265 billion. So you're looking at a tenfold increase is what is assumed over the next decade, which is insanity. It's insanity when you think about that type of growth. I don't think there's any other technology that grows at that pace. And it is business, and it works. So Ben, with that in mind, you know, what can companies be doing and what can security experts be doing to play a role for their companies and do the most they can to lower that attack surface and minimize that risk for their organizations?
Yeah, you know, we commonly see one of the easiest entry points for ransomware or any malware in general is through phishing techniques, right? So they're blast emailing an entire organization, any mailing list they can find, right? You can punch your email address into have I been owned, and you're going to be pulled up 8 different times, right? So they have your credentials already. They're going to hit those email addresses. 1 million people, they only need one person to click through to compromise your entire network. It's unfortunate as security professionals, you could have the most robust technology in place. One person clicks the wrong link, enters the wrong information. Maybe there's a form filled and they'd enter their credentials in there. They get an email that says, hey, IT's changing their passwords today. Please give me your old password. They entered it. You have all the stuff. You're good to go. Employees are just going to always be, unfortunately, that weakest link. Security awareness training is key.
Yeah.
Continuing to pound home on everyone, know what you're clicking, know what you're looking at, and avoid those rogue and malicious links as well. Employees are going to be the weakest link, unfortunately.
Yeah, I like to say when you think about evaluating your risk, that your biggest risk is what your employees are doing. And if you think about the number of hackers who are trying to get access to your facility, to your equipment, to your network, and multiply that by the number of employees you have, that is the magnitude of risk that you have for your company, right? So that's an easy thing to imagine. Large organizations, you got 1,000 employees, do the math. You have huge risk because the human factor is your biggest compromisable risk. It's the closest thing that can give away the keys to the gate. And that's where it becomes really tricky. So I always try to say that if you're going to start somewhere, if there's one place you're going to start and you can't figure out where to start and you're like, I just got to get this thing secured and there's so much stuff I got to figure out, I don't know what to do. If you're going to start somewhere, that is, apply MFA, multi-factor authentication, to your organization, to everything that they're accessing. Because just that one thing is protecting that 1,000 set of employees, each one of their credentials, by something else other than a user ID and password that can be given, compromised, and given away because, hey, 500 of those employees have already been reusing their passwords on other websites so they don't have to remember too many passwords. And they've been sending their corporate credentials out publicly across the web, and now they've been compromised and they don't even know it, right? So MFA is the first and I think most important place to start. Yeah, there's other things you need to do for your network. There's endpoint protection. There's perimeter protection like SIMs and XDRs. But that, you have to start somewhere, and that's where I would start.
Yeah, that's a good point. And for those listening that aren't familiar with multi-factor authentication, it's really just more than one factor used to authenticate your identity, whether it be a password, which is something you know, versus a token on your phone, which is something you have, a fingerprint scan, which is something that you are. There's several different factors that you can use. Typically, a multi-factor authentication system uses more than one. Not limited to two, but more than one.
Yeah, and I think for some people too, they might be guessing, well, so now I got to go purchase something to make this happen, but how do I protect myself at home? Well, you know what? Google has multi-factor authentication. Microsoft has multi-factor authentication. There are apps that you can get on your phone, like Authenticator and some of these other apps that allows you to link websites that you use to more than one form of authentication. So when you go to that website, it says, oh, this is a website that you said you need to also have another form of authentication. So it sends your phone a message that you have in your hand, something you have as your second factor, that you can say, yes, I got a number, I have an ID number, and I'm going to put in this time ID, and I'm going to put it in so that I can get in this, and I'll put in my code and it'll let me in, right? Or whatever the second form of authentication is. So there are ways for even the person at home to protect themselves, as well as for the corporate organizations to protect themselves.
Yep, and most of the listeners are probably already using multi-factor and may not have even known that through their bank or
definitely.
Through a lot of websites.
That's right.
All right, well, good stuff. We'll take another quick break and jump back into it, maybe even participate in a little quiz. What do you think?
Let's go for it.
In this segment, we discuss what can companies do to prevent ransomware impacts today. Ransomware, by 2031, is projected to cost the world $256 billion. Employees are your biggest risk. 2 hackers times 1,000 employees times 10 attempts equals 20,000 attempts to gain corporate credentials. Train employees on security awareness. And multi-factor authentication and employee training is a good place to start.
And we're back. We're gonna do this really cheesy quiz that I found online based on ransomware, and it says, let's find out how much you know about ransomware. Click the correct response for each question. So I'm going to start with you, Ben, and
Yeah, that's fair. Fingers crossed. I hope it's easy. I did not do well in high school, but I made up for it in college.
let me just say this. Let me just preface this with this. If either one of you miss any of these questions, I'm just shutting my machine down and I'm just going to bed.
Fair,
okay.
fair.
I'm not even finishing this podcast tonight. But it's pretty funny because I think this gives you an indicator of what they assume people know about the topic, which is humorous if nothing else. Okay, so question 1 is, what is ransomware? Ben, this is to you now. You think really hard on this one, okay? Option A, software that infects computer networks and mobile devices to hold your data hostage until you send the attackers money. Now, dang, we may have covered that earlier, so please don't miss this one. B, computer equipment that criminals steal from you and won't return until you pay them. Computer equipment. C, software used to protect your computer or mobile device from harmful viruses. Or D, a form of cryptocurrency.
Kevin, I'm going to go with A.
You went with A. Let me see if you're right. That is correct. All right. Good job.
Good job,
man. That was so
pretty
tense.
confident.
Okay, Jason.
Okay.
Number 2. Local backup files saved on your computer will protect your data from being lost in a ransomware attack. True or false?
Well, I saved them and I backed them up, but I'm going to have to go with false.
But wait, you backed them up.
True? No, I mean false.
Right. Believe it or not, you're right. This is correct because important files should be regularly backed up on a drive or server that is where
Not on your local
connected.
computer.
Not local. Never save local.
That's why we're disconnecting it from the network if you get attacked.
God, you're so
I know,
smart.
thank you.
You impress me every time you open your mouth. It impresses me. All right, Ben. Number 3. Which of these best describes how criminals start ransomware attacks? A, sending a scam email with links or attachments that put your data and network at risk. B, getting into your server through vulnerabilities and installing malware. C, using infected websites that automatically download malicious software to your computer or mobile device. Or D, all of the above.
So I have a general rule. Anytime there's an all of above, I always go with all of the above. So I'm going to go with D, final answer.
Yeah.
Ben,
Did we get any all of the aboves in the CISSP
yeah,
exam?
yeah,
I can't remember. I doubt it.
We had a few. Yeah,
Did we?
they were trying to trick
we?
you, but Ben, I think that philosophy is what got you through college.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. That and cheating off my neighbor.
Hey, when in doubt, if there's no all of the above, always choose C.
Yeah, right.
All right, Jason. Number 4. If you encounter a ransomware attack, the first thing you should do is pay the ransom. True or false?
Well, I'm going to say what I would do. I ain't paying nobody nothing. That's my answer.
Yeah.
So
I ain't paying.
So
you
I'm going
fool.
with false.
Okay, let's listen to this logic. This should be fun. This is correct. First, disconnect the infected computer or device from your network. If your data has been stolen, take steps to protect your company and notify those who might be affected. Report the attack right away to your local FBI office, right down the street. Check to see if you can restore your systems from backups, then determine whether to pay the ransom. Knowing that law enforcement doesn't recommend it, and that paying the ransom doesn't guarantee you'll get your data back. We didn't even
That's
touch on
true.
that tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, paying your ransom just because they give you an encryption key even doesn't necessarily mean it's always
Doesn't
the
mean
one.
Honest
they
criminals.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they haven't exposed it to the dark web and already started selling that stuff.
Yeah, that's another point. They give your data back, get your money, get their Bitcoin, and they've already sold it to the dark web anyway. So, like you said, double dipping.
Yeah. Well, if you're Colonial Pipeline,
All
I
right,
think you
the last
answered
question.
true there, right? They just paid immediately, didn't
I
they?
know. Yeah, if you're Colonial Pipeline, you're like,
Hey,
okay,
you
we're paying.
Yeah, they didn't even think about it.
Hey, sometimes it just pays. Get that revenue flowing again, baby. Right? Okay, question 5, the last question. Ben, this is yours. Setting your software to auto-update is one way you can help protect your business from ransomware.
Love this.
True or
Harp at
false?
home. It's true. Update. Keep going. Absolutely.
This is correct. To keep your security up to date, it's important to install the latest patches and updates. Setting them to auto-update whenever you can to help make that happen. On mobile devices, you may have to do it manually. So this is critical. Keep one thing in mind when you're talking about patching systems. Microsoft drops patches once a month for a reason. They're constantly being flooded with flaws and bugs and things that they're uncovering in their code that can put your company at risk. So once a month, they have the glorious Patch Tuesday where they drop hundreds of patches across their various operating systems and third parties and software. And the sole purpose really is to protect you from these types of attacks. So if you're not patching your systems regularly, that's one of the very first things you can do as an organization that is, in my opinion, low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Get it done, never look
Although,
back.
Jason, do you remember, I think it was the SolarWinds hacker you and I had a good laugh about. The people that weren't compromised were the ones that were several versions behind in the
That's
SolarWinds
right.
update. So,
Yeah, because they waited so long, nobody even looked at that code anymore.
so out of date, it wasn't even there.
All right. Well, hey, guys, as cheesy as that was and as lame as that was, that kind of gives you a barometer as to where the FTC thinks most people are when it comes to ransomware, which is kind of
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I appreciate that, Kevin.
Yeah,
So-
that's good.
So I think, I'll be the first to say, I really enjoyed this. We were able to have some pretty, fluid conversation around ransomware and protection and things, that people may or may not have known about in their story of ransomware that they can now fill in some of the blanks on. So, Ben, as always, it's been fun having you on here because, just having the shop talk with you it's always a blast. Like you were just saying, reminiscing back when we were talking about the SolarWinds hack, those are the things that we can do, as professionals and look back on it and see where the mistakes are and hope that those mistakes never happen to us again, right? At any point, because to err is human, and humans are the ones that are our biggest compromisable risk. So regardless of the amount of things we do, there is always a potential that any one of us could be under an attack that we find ourselves waking up to the next day. So to that point, it's always great for us to stay prepared and to listen to things like this to learn more. And again, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Thank you, Kevin. Looking forward to more episodes to come, gentlemen. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. We appreciate it. And just so you guys know, you did score 100%. I'm going to print this out and email it to you so you can frame it on your wall.
Oh, I get a certificate.
Good job. Good job. All right, with that, we're going to call this one a close and say goodbye, everybody. Please join us in the next episode where we continue to talk ransomware, episode number 2.
Thanks. See
Take
you guys.
care. Hello, everyone. If you enjoyed the podcast today, I'm excited to share with you that you can now listen to us on all of these major streaming platforms. Also, if you learned anything from the conversation today, please share this episode with your friends, family, and colleagues. The more of this knowledge we can share, the more cyber secure we all become. I'd say like, subscribe, and all of that jazz, but hey, you're not morons. You know that. I will leave you with some words of wisdom, though, from the former director of the FBI, Mr. Robert S. Mueller III. He said there are only two types of companies, those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. You guys be safe, remain diligent, and take care.